interceptions, watching it play out, it's not that other people get the ball. Even I think today there was one for him, but it's that it's hard to find where the play actually would end in a real NFL game. But most times it feels like it would end before it ends in these practices. That is to say, the ball is not coming out quickly with the Niners offense right now.
Yeah, there was a red zone period, which was pretty terrible. And I think my number one takeaway once they got into team periods was this guy is a major work in progress. Same things that we said last year when he played games. And we had a lot of people, I'm not making much of the comments, were very angry. Now, granted, everyone witnessed the games, right? The Arizona game and the Houston game. I think our two takeaways were much more bearish than a lot of people. And it was simply because of the bar. Like, the thing is, when we're critical of Trey, and being critical of a guy who needs a lot of work is not being critical when the guy has played one season in college, started 2 NFL games. Every fucking player would need a lot of work in that situation. Most star players get a lot of reps in college. Like, let's use the Niners' best players. Trent Williams started at Oklahoma for 3 years. George Kittle, pretty sure he was a fifth-year senior at Iowa. Nick Bosa, several-year starter at Ohio State. Fred Warner, played a lot of games at BYU. All their guys had a ton of reps by the time they got to the pros. That is not the case with Trey Lance. Ayuk is the guy with probably the most limited reps because he was a junior college transfer, and it has taken him till year 3 for Kyle to be like, I feel very good about this guy. Now, he had moments in year 1 and 2, but it was an up and down road. The difference at quarterback is Ayuk, for example. He ultimately, when he gets his route called, just has to worry about his route, getting open, potentially the corner and the safety, depending on the coverage. It might just be him versus the corner. Trey, so let's use the red zone, for example. The red zone's hard. Why? The field is much wider than it is long. You just don't have as much room. It's the one area where the defense, the field works to their advantage. And things happen very fast, and you don't have much time. And you could argue, and I've seen this on social media, and I think it's fair, the Niners statistically had one of the better defenses in the league. They are easily going to be one of the better defenses again. So it's not playing a shitty NFL defense. But he had multiple series today where it looked like that would be a 3 if they passed every down, which they would not, and that's part of it too. They have a coach. Of all the good NFL coaches, right, of all the good teams that are going to compete to make the playoffs, them and the Ravens want to run the ball the most. Their offense going to look a lot different, Lamar, but you would say them and the Ravens, stylistically, again, stylistically it looks different. Philosophically will be the same. Play great defense, shove it down your throat. Now, Lamar is a way better passer right now than Trey Lance. That's not what I'm saying, but they want to rush it 30 times a game and kick your ass on defense and beat you like 28-7, right? That's what Kyle, they're not looking, Andy wants like 50 a game, right? The Ravens want to overpower you. That's what Kyle wants to do. But like ultimately football, and when you're playing the best teams, get in the red zone, you got to be good, and you got to be good on passing downs, which are 2nd and 3rd and long. You know?
This is going to sound...
And that scenario right now, by far, and most young quarterbacks, is the biggest area of concern for him as a player.
What we're describing right now is not some debate. Like, that's what happened today. What John just described was what happened.
This is not opinion. These are facts. It was a struggle.
It was bad. It was bad in the red zone. Not because he turned the ball over, but because actually the one turnover, Kyle Juszczyk was running open, and Trey was out of the pocket and looking, and finally got to Juszczyk late, and Trevarius Ward had been able to close the gap and dove and intercepted the ball.
Well, because in the red zone, you got to be, your progressions at the 50-yard line, you got a little more time. In the red zone, it's probably, I bet an offensive coach would tell you it's 3x sped up. So Kyle Juszczyk, you got to be over there at half the time that maybe you normally could in the middle of the field. Because the timing, he has the sideline to work as his advantage because Kyle can't create depth, right? There's not that much room. You can't layer your offense, right? And that's the Niners. When Jimmy's had success, right, it was like layered. It was Kittle, Debo, Ayuk kind of layered throughout the field. Well, you can't layer it at the 6-yard line because you got 14 yards to work with, or that's bad math.
4-yard line, you'd have 14.
Yeah. Yeah.
At the 10, you'd have 20. Yeah. I mean, but, I think, and this is going to sound kind of glass half full. I don't intend it to, but I do believe this. If we went to practice today and the reports were Trey Lance is dominating the Niners defense in the red zone, I think that would be worse for the Niners than the reverse. And the reason is because of what you described, because this team is built to have its defense help lead them. In fact, Trent Williams said after the practice today, our defense took us to the NFC Championship game last year. This team is built to do what you said. Because the team is built to be if they were built to be the Chiefs, then it'd be a problem if their quarterback isn't showing that he's going to be able to carry them with his arm from the beginning of the season. But that's not how they're built. So the Niners need their defense to be fantastic, first and foremost, and then they need to backfill with some of what Trey Lance can do to accent the run game. And the reality is Debo was not at full reps on Monday yet, right? So it's not like it's Debo and Ayuk and Kittle and Elijah Mitchell on every snap for Trey Lance all the time.
Was Juwan Jennings out there?
Juwan Jennings was out there. In fact, Trey did not throw him the ball at one point in the back of the end zone in the red zone, and Juwan Jennings kind of shook his head for a second.
Well, he's a guy. He's going to be there. I mean, from a red zone size-wise, non-Kittle, he's their biggest wide receiver by a country mile of the guys they're going to play, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Even though Ayuk has a big catching radius, and he had a sweet catch today on a play that probably doesn't exist in real football, and that's the hard part, right? I mean, it was a sweet catch, but like Trey's probably already sacked by then or running away.
It was a Trey rolling left across his body, Ayuk high pointing a line drive in a jump ball with Trevarius Ward at the front of the end zone. Ayuk also had a great high point on a front pylon fade against Jimmy Ward in one-on-ones. And then he had a 40-yard catch over the top with actually Nick Bosa kind of came up the middle and was bearing down on Trey, but can't hit him. Ayuk and I think it's pretty clear Ayuk and Trey Lance, I don't know if I want to say they have the best chemistry, but the most trust, the balls that Trey just lets rip, it's Ayuk by and large, at least today, that was going to get them.
I'm not saying, because you can't take away that the Niners have not had the go route for 40, 50 yards down the sideline. I don't worry about that with Trey Lance, right? Like they're backed up on their 30, throwing a bomb. Like that, to me, the red zone and areas where you got to be quicker, right? Like you might throw that bomb on 1st and 10. So the defense doesn't know it's coming. You don't just always throw that on 3rd and 10, right? On 3rd and 10, when they know most of your guys are working toward the sticks and you got to play a physical / mental game. Again, there's nothing wrong with this. It's part of being a young player, but it's why these next 3 or 4 weeks for him are huge. And honestly, the first month of the season, the reps are big. Like he should be dramatically better Halloween than he is week 2. That's part of the deal. And this is where it goes back to last year. Like I said it at practice, and people, especially in the chat right now on the tube, are going to be like, what? As of today, if the Niners played tomorrow, Mac Jones is a better player than Trey Lance. That's not even debatable. But we said when the draft pick happened. Now, part of it, Trey didn't get to play last year, really. But like this draft pick was for the big picture, for the next several years, for the next decade, the high-end talent. And that is on now Kyle, Greasy, the players around him, Trey himself, to just grow and grow and grow over every rep, every practice. It's cliche, but like you do get better every day, especially when you haven't practiced that much. Like ultimately, Trent Williams is just maintaining. Like he's just maintaining. Even Kittle, like just stay healthy. Trey is like every day I should be taking. Don't need to take huge steps, but like little step here, little step here. Next time I know in the red zone, off cover 4 when the Rover's here, just little shit. I mean, he's in the deep end of calculus right now, right? Against really good players too. It's just gonna be hard. But here's the thing: it's not. He is playing with sweet players, right? That's where like it's not like he's not playing. He's playing with a highly paid star wide receiver now. Ayuk, first rounder, who's a stud. One of the highest paid tight ends, who's a star. He's got star weapons. So this gets back to the pressure. You just kind of you feel it. Again, I'm not saying like he's freaking out every pass, but how could he not his backup is not his backup, but the guy that started last year, who's still kind of around. I mean, it's a bizarre situation.
Wait, kind of around or around?
He's around. You mentioned this yesterday on our Debo emergency pod, and I just thought you were wrong. Because I just thought
you didn't correct me. You just let me be wrong.
Well, because I wasn't quite sure, but I thought Jimmy was like showing up before practice, getting sent home. Clearly, that you knew that wasn't the case. Mayoko's like, yeah, bro. Like a couple days ago, he was like running while practice was going on. Very bizarre. And I'm like, listen, you guys have been around the NFL longer than me, but I feel like since I've been in it, around it, this is an unprecedented situation. Him and Cam Inman laughed. They're like, yeah, this is unprecedented situation.
And those guys have seen it
for since the 90s. But when you just
but still look young.
Yeah, still both of them look fantastic. But part of it is like they don't just compare the Niners. Like when you cover a team, like you pretty understand the league. Like, guy, I've been saying this over and over. This is not abnormal. This is unprecedented. When you go all in on the young quarterback, the old quarterback is done, but he's still around. He's still around. It's crazy. Honestly, it speaks probably more to Jimmy than anything because 99% of people would draw a line in this because there would be bad blood. Be like,
I think one thing is clear. Garoppolo is an all-time teammate, team member, whatever you want to call him.
Maybe also just hates confrontation, like doesn't want weird stuff.
Yeah,
I think it's a pretty easy one. If Rap Sheet tweeted right now, Jimmy Garoppolo has told the Niners, release me.
Yeah.
Like that would just create immediately some urgency to them and create something. He ain't doing that.
Yeah, I mean, we go back and forth on
that.
You
keep thinking it's nothing. If he says that, it creates like you kind of like, what are you going to do? Are you going to be the asshole? Like they don't want to do that either.
But to your point, they may do it anyway. But I don't think Jimmy Garoppolo telling them, they know he doesn't want to be there anymore. I don't think him. Not that we're going to argue about this again. I've stated my case.
But it's easy. It's easy to do nothing when you know he doesn't care. It's easy to like get a divorce, let her live there. If she lets you bring in your girlfriends, it's another thing. If she kicks you out of the house, like he's cool with you doing whatever you want.
Yeah, but they can just tell him, fine, you've demanded your release. You can just not show up here anymore. But they're going to do it on their timeline. I think they've shown that over and over and over.
You don't think if he demanded his release, they would release him immediately?
No.
See, I do.
Why would I don't understand. Again, I don't want to get sidetracked by this, but I don't understand what changes because he demanded it. If they tell him just don't show up anymore, because I do think I don't think they're going to ride him to the end of the preseason. So
I would ride him as long as you want if he's cool with it. My old take has always been, I think, like, God, it's just business 101. Like, you just demand a release. But if he ain't going to do it, you just ride it until you got to. Because there's no urgency. You're not paying him anything.
On Trey, the 49ers last year were fourth in the NFL in touchdown percentage in the red zone, 64%, fourth best in the league. Buffalo, Tampa, Seattle, and the Niners, and then fifth was the Chargers. Jimmy was in a four-way tie for 11th. So really it's like, 16th players, but 11th in terms of the ranking in red zone touchdowns with 15. So Tua, Jimmy, Teddy Bridgewater, Russell Wilson threw 15 red zone touchdowns. So what does it tell you? I don't have the rushing numbers in front of me, but that the Niners created red zone scores, right? In part on the ground, but I would imagine I'd love to watch a cut up of Jimmy's red zone touchdown throw.
I would also guess that some of the higher touchdown passers, the Brady's, Stafford, Rodgers, threw a higher percentage of touchdowns outside the 20 than maybe Jimmy.
Brady and Stafford threw 32 red zone scores each.
Wait, you said Jimmy had 15?
Yeah.
Oh, so okay, never mind. They're really high.
So everybody, right, just eats in the red zone.
Oh, okay. So like, what's Rodgers?
Rodgers was 30 red zone touchdowns.
Oh, so the top guys are just crushing in the red zone.
Herbert and Allen 29, Mahomes 24.
Oh, okay. I misheard
but
you.
But the Niners are at the top of the amount of time when they go in the red zone. They score touchdowns 64% of the time, which is fourth best in the NFL.
Well, the difference I would say of the Brady, Allen, and Herbert, like the Niners run the ball in a lot. Those teams are throwing it. And why wouldn't you? Right? It's like, why do the Warriors shoot so many threes? Well, they got great three-point shooter. Why do you pass it at the 10-yard line? Well, we got Tom Brady. We got Aaron Rodgers. It's like, I trust this guy to throw a touchdown. Like, ultimately, the Niners, I mean, they score a lot of within the 5-yard line rush touchdowns because he'll run it 4 straight times. Right? That's the other thing. Now, he won't just shove it up the whole time, but he will run 4 different run plays at the 7-yard line and punch it in, which is smart, which again is what he'll do again this year.
Jimmy had 11 carries in the red zone. Jimmy had 3 carries in the red zone last year for 3 touchdowns. Right. Trey Lance is going to have more than 3 carries in the red zone this year.
That's true too. That's an area out here that like he won't. But I also think you saw him. There was one run play today where he ran outside and I almost got killed because a linebacker, because again, they have to take angles where they know they can't hit. So they just kind of run straight. It's not totally real football, especially when it's the quarterback. I would say any offensive player, because they're not going to tackle him. Is that, do you really, part of it was you get a front row seat. It's pretty cool. You know, sometimes you and I were talking about it. Like, we're just on the sideline, like basically a front row seat. Like, it's pretty sweet. You just take hellacious shots if you're a running quarterback, if they get you. Now, Lamar and Kyler are like as close to ungettable as they get because they're so quick and so elusive. That's not Trey style. You know, Trey is a bigger, he's still athletic, but he's not, I wouldn't call him as an explosive runner for NFL standards. Quick, but
it's a good point. Like, this was one of the things we won't really get to see until they play the Bears week 1. That was one of the questions last year with him. He was an uncomfortable runner. We talked to Dante Whitner about it too on the show. Remember, like Trey was uncomfortable in space as a runner. Now, design runs, different story, but like when it came time to figure out whether to slide or to try and go to the sideline or to try to take on a defender or to try to stiff arm or to try to juke, it felt like he was caught in between all of those things.
Which was understood, right? It's like the first time like an animal touches water, they kind of put their paw in. He had never,
it's a good one,
an enormous jump from the little guys he was playing to the Arizona Cardinals. And I think right away he realized, like, God, is Budda Baker faster than me? Is Isaiah Simmons? And he kind of felt his way. Where Cams and the Lamars and the Kylers just had come and they just came right in and they just figured it out on the fly. Trey was like thrown in midseason. To me, that's an area to keep an eye on. Like, does he keep feeling his way out, or is he much more of a confident runner, or is he just not really as much of a runner as we were going to think to begin with, which I'd be fine with. Like, ultimately, when you think about Deshaun Watson and Russell Wilson, athletic guys who are pass first guys, they're not. Russell a little bit super young, but it was always kind of sliding. He was not just taking off all the time. Deshaun too, for athletic guys, because you know why? I think they would tell you this is like, actually, I'm not quite as fast, like relative to human beings I am, but like Aziz Al-Shire fucking run me down backwards, right? And then he'd hit me. Think how many D linemen over the last 5-6 years have come in running 4.7s. What's Kayvon run? I mean, these guys, every guy can fly. Bosa runs down quarterbacks with ease. Aaron Donald can fly. I mean, these D linemen, let alone all the linebackers, there aren't the big burly middle linebackers anymore. Fred Warner's like a normal linebacker now, right? I mean, all these linebackers look like the Greenlaws. Those guys can run, like run. So to me, I wonder if the Trey Lance 15 years ago, relative to a lot of linebackers, a lot faster. Nowadays, think how many hybrid players like Isaiah Simmons just constantly coming in the league.
Do you remember last year the Ohio State-Oregon game? Kayvon was out.
And yeah, the shootout.
And
the Rose Bowl.
No, not the Utah.
Ohio State, Oregon.
Game.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know if you remember, but Oregon had a defensive end, and they had some injuries who they moved to tight end in that game, and he caught like the 3rd down conversion play late. And then he had a big play at the end of the game to end the game. I think he hit the running back or the quarterback, whatever.
I remember a back-breaking play to a tight end.
With like big guy with dreads.
Yeah.
Cut his hair. His name's DJ Johnson. He's like one of their pass rushers again this year. I heard might be the fastest guy on their team. His GPS number was 23 miles an hour. But he's massive, right? He's humongous. He's the starting defensive end for the Oregon Ducks. Now I don't know what he's going to end up being as an NFL draft pick, but that's a college player, right? But like that's what you get at the highest level. Trey wasn't playing those guys in college.
But I even think like 20 years ago, I remember when I got to Fresno, Richard Marshall would come back, and he was maybe this is when my cousin was on the team, and he would come back and he would tell the story to like all the Fresno guys of he went to Carolina, and Julius Peppers in the offseason wouldn't run with the linemen. He would run with the DBs and wide receivers And Julius for a long time was like all-time outlier, him and Javon Curse. It doesn't feel like a lot of like the Myles Garrett's, that type guy. They're all, and we're talking linemen. I'm not talking the linebackers.
Robert Kimbichi today?
Yeah, I think the amount of team speed now, because the game is more spread out, like ultimately Kyler and Lamar are so athletic and so fast. They would be fast against no matter who. You could be 17 Greenlaws out there, right? Or, that Kayvons or whoever. But like, I think Trey Lance is a good example of like, you're a 4.7, 4.8 guy, fast relative to a lot of players historically, but the league has never been faster. So your speed helps. Like Jimmy could not run. Like Jimmy was never a threat to even run really for like 7 yards. You have that. To me, that's a huge advantage, right? Yeah. Just nothing there. Just can you get up and get 6 yards, first down? Like occasionally like Dak.
I think the question
younger Dak.
Yeah, I think the question with Trey, one of the questions with Trey is, will enough stuff go right around him because of his run game, because the players he has, because the defense, because what Kyle asked him to do and the things that they scheme for him, that he doesn't get scarred by some of the struggles of maybe not seeing it as quickly as he will when he becomes a more experienced player? Meaning, what happens when he doesn't see it right now? Does he panic and take off, or does he continue to try and be a passer first? I don't know. But I think it's important that the Niners play with leads, run the ball effectively, so that he's not put in these spots where he has to make the play that only works for right now, right? Which is tuck it and run and just don't get sacked and get 3 yards, at the expense of what ultimately you want him to overcome some of those struggles, figure it out. It's okay if he throws a couple of picks because we're running the ball and our defense is good and it's not going to turn into touchdowns. And he really learns the way ultimately they're going to need him to play, the way the best quarterbacks play, passing the ball first and then using his legs as a secondary weapon.
Do you think trying to break him in, having two joint practices with two separate teams would have been a lot to put on him? It probably makes sense just do the one joint practice and have a couple week kind of lead in of just letting him feel out to be the lead guy for a while. Because a lot of teams now do two. Remember, we went over it the other day. A ton of teams do two. Yeah. Niners just do the one. You could argue then you got so much other stuff going on. Maybe it's the right mindset to just have like basically these 3 weeks of practice before and a preseason game before the Minnesota week. So he gets to build up a lot of reps.
I mean, you're not going to play, like I wouldn't play him in the preseason. You wouldn't play him in the preseason. I don't think.
No snaps?
The more I think about it, the more I think I'd give him no snaps.
Well, Trent's not playing a snap, right?
Yeah, no, you would think not. Now
you coming off injury, probably not either. Are you putting him with backups?
No.
In a preseason game. It
might he's
inevitably
played
happen
in the regular season. So the preseason is not going to give him more than the regular season's giving him. And so what do you putting him out there to do exactly? I wouldn't be in I would say we're not putting him in the preseason, but whatever.
Would you play like Kinlaw, Debo, or not Kinlaw? But, no, I meant Fred Warner, Bosa, Trent, Kittle, Debo. Those guys are all, you're putting them on the McVay, LaFleur plan, right?
Yeah, I'm all in on it. You've been on it for a while now. I'm all in on it. And that's where the joint practices are really valuable, right? I think joint practices will be valuable for him given that we think this defense is pretty good. Will joint practices be a little easier for him? Maybe. I don't know. I think it'll help by the time you get there that Debo's running with the one team all the time. But, I just clearly it's going to take some time. And this is why it's better to be on a good team than it is to be on a bad team if you're a developing quarterback.
Well, here's the reality, guy. It's August 1st. You have another 40 days before you even play a game. And I think this is where, when the schedule came out, we're like, it's a lot better if you have an easier landing spot and you get one of the worst teams in the league immediately. And then I think it's Carolina Panthers. Is that week 2? Or is it Atlanta? Seattle at home. So it's the Bears, Seattle, 1-2.
Yep. At Denver, Rams, at Carolina, at Atlanta, KC, at the Rams.
So I like the start of the season. Jamal Adams, you see his fingers are all messed up.
Jamal Adams and the Seahawks probably picked to finish 4th in the NFC West. Yeah. Corey on the stream says we should also hold the offensive line accountable. Yeah, I mean, they got to figure out who their center is. They had some Spencer Buford, their 4th-round pick out of UTSA, John, the Roadrunners, once of Larry Coker, playing some right guard with the ones today.
I do not. And again, I mean, you would rather have Larry Allen or, whoever, the great Quentin Nelson for sure. I'm not acting like top guards don't dominate, but most people aren't top guards. And Ryan Wendell started in a Super Bowl.